Oh, ready.
Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life, Laurel and Laurel. We are ready to do a little deep dive session with you out there today. I hope you're ready for this, but also it's going to be light and joyful. What do you think, Laurel? Can we do both at the same time?
Absolutely. And let's add fun to that too.
Definitely fun. Definitely fun. I love our weekly conversations, Laurel. I just want to say that before we get started because I just look forward to it all the time. How about you?
I do too. And
Yeah.
really, my favorite thing about our conversations and our recordings is that we're together. We have a topic in mind. We don't really know where our conversation is going to go. And I know we've talked about this together, creating the experience for our listeners that they're just sitting around the kitchen table with us, right?
Yes. Yes. I know.
And
I
that's
love it.
what I
Yeah.
love.
I know. And I love it when we have feedback from our listeners, friends out there, and they tell us that's exactly how they feel. So I feel like we've accomplished our mission. I
Mm.
know recently we talked about bringing tea, and having tea together, just like we're sitting around having tea. So I have my morning tea with me. All right. Let's talk about what our topic is today and why we have so much fun and why we never know where it's going to go. And it really relates to our topic, which is living from the heart. And that is what we consider revolutionary work here at Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life.
Mm.
We come on the show and we really, right before we start recording, we take time to tune in and we are tuning in to get centered in our heart, deep into our beingness, and allow ourselves to really speak from a heartfelt place. And that ultimately, I guess, is really the essence of living from the heart, isn't it, Laurel?
It really is. And
Yeah.
preparing yourself to do that, I think it's so important,
Yes.
where we come together and we take that time. If imagine if we entered into the world, the outside world, outside of our home, with that intention in mind. When you're going to the grocery store, how can you sit for a minute before you get out of the car and really settle into your heart?
Yeah. I remember one time when I was still living in Massachusetts, and I forget who said this to me, but somebody said to me once, if you really take the time and when you're talking to somebody, even if it's just going through the drive through, getting coffee or whatever, and you really look into their eyes and you pause and you say something and see if you can catch their eye and really look into their eye and smile, that the whole interaction will feel different and you'll notice the feeling of it. And I feel like that's one of the ways, right? If we think about what are the different ways that we can be more heart centered, live from a more heart centered place, there are little techniques that we can use. So we've already mentioned two. One is, right, really like tuning in
Grounding. Yeah.
first, getting grounded in your heart. And another one is really connecting with people, feeling like you really have their full attention and looking into somebody's eyes. If it's not a cultural, mishap, which I know it is in some cultures, you're not supposed to do that. But in our culture here in the Western world, generally that's accepted. And it is a way to really, I think it slows us all down than the quickly hurrying through every interaction that we have and allows us to actually feel something when we're together.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the cultural differences because even here in our culture where it is widely accepted, there are people that maybe,
Yeah.
have some discomfort with being looked at right
Yes.
in the eye,
Yeah.
or they're willing to receive that, but they really can't do that in return. So
Right.
just being mindful of what other ways, I mean, looking someone in the eye is important.
Mhm.
If, I'll say I'm going to say again, maybe neurodivergent
Yes,
reasons why
definitely.
someone can't receive that. But
Mhm.
maybe it's a touch of a hand. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a smile, right? I
Right.
mean, even
Right.
I have found, being out and about, when you open the door for someone and hold it
Mm.
open for someone else to go before you, it is a connection that is so deep
Yeah.
in an instant, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so let's just think about our topic today and why it's so important, and dig into that a little bit because I think about a lot, and especially when I'm moving around in the world and just watching people coming and going. and how people in general um, seem very tired, harried, hurried. Um, so a lot of times I feel people's overwhelm when I'm near them. And so this idea of switching out of the mode of constantly doing more, hurrying through our life, and instead slowing down a little bit, getting centered in our heart, and really being more fully present in a full body way is really life changing, and in a life quality kind of way, in our moment to moment quality, right, of experience. Yeah,
It is. It really is.
yeah, yeah. Do you have any certain ways that for you that you connect heart to heart with people, that happens kind of inadvertently, almost not necessarily with conscious effort, but it happens and you recognize it?
It happens a lot, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
to me, right?
Yeah.
That, sometimes the connection really quickly is so real that
Mm,
I wonder, how does that happen? Right.
yeah.
But I do think that the more that you are able to connect with your own heart allows you then to connect with other people in a
Yeah.
different way. And
Yeah.
so, I think as we do the inner work, I should not be surprised, and our listeners should not be surprised if, you're doing the inner work and then your connections end up being more heartfelt, right? And,
Mm,
it's not always easy because, as you say, you can feel other people's, whether it's their anxiety or tension or whatever that emotion is that they're bringing, you know, sometimes when you lead the heartfelt life, your heart is open. So you're going to experience all of, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
right, right. And I'm glad you circled back to this idea of, I think our inner work, this beautiful work, is our preparatory work to be able to live in a more open-hearted way and connecting more at a heart level, because oftentimes we shy away from that. I know for me early on, it was hard for me to live from a heart based place when I had so much sadness in my heart, because oftentimes that would be where I'd end up rather than feeling the strength of my heart, or the steadiness, or the joy, or the comfort that can come from my heart. I often got connected with my sadness, and so I shied away from that. And I think that, for me, it was revolutionary to get to that point after doing some years of therapy where I didn't feel like sadness was my default position. And so I could live from a much more open hearted place and feel like I could show up and not maybe be Debbie Downer,
Yeah.
to
Yes.
put it
Or,
bluntly.
right. And
Yeah.
the other thing that happens when, you know, maybe when we're feeling sadness or whatever feeling that we're not comfortable with, then we shy away not just from the feeling, but from the people who I'm going to say we're closest to, that we can allow that feeling, whether we're doing it consciously
Mm,
or subconsciously, where we can allow that feeling, that emotion to be to be shown, to be shared. And sometimes, I mean, I know I have a tendency to do this. When I am at a low point, I pull away from people. And
right.
the people that
Yeah.
know me best know that's a clear indication that something's going on. And
Yeah.
so doing that inner work, like you were saying, you really have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness, right?
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
be willing to show up knowing that you may be bringing an emotion that is uncomfortable, that is
Mm,
discomfort, that is unfamiliar. You may be bringing that emotion with you,
right.
but how
Right.
can you still connect with people, in a heartfelt way, or live from the heart, where that emotion is simply one of many emotions that you're capable of living?
Yeah. This is a great example too to use as some more strategy around how to maybe shift into feeling a little more comfortable with heart based talk and heart based living. And so when we are in a space and we're around someone and we know that they're having a hard time, right? Or if they've withdrawn, how can we just go and offer an opportunity for them to be heard, to be listened to even acknowledge it seems like you're not yourself, or it seems like you're having a hard, moment. Is there anything I can do to help you? I think because we have been a culture of, let's say, maybe emotionally weak people for quite a long time, and now we're strengthening that we've shied away from, and just encountering, like going in, right, like that's one of the things I think I've learned as a coach and a counselor, right, is how to go in and just ask somebody about the difficult moment, right? Tell me about what's going on for you. Do you want to talk about what's happening with you right now? You seem a little down, you seem whatever, and give them the opportunity and the space to talk about it. Sometimes, even if it's not the time or the space to talk about it, just being asked can make us feel a little bit better. And then maybe we can even rise to the occasion, be present for that, put aside whatever is difficult if we don't want to talk about it, but just to feel like we've been acknowledged in
Yeah.
in our discomfort can be a comfort for us.
Yes, it really can be. I experienced that this fall with a friend who I haven't known that long, but we were sitting across the table from each other, and I was sharing something that I didn't think was going to be as emotional as it was, but some emotion came up as I was telling her this story or experience of mine, and um, she just reached out and touched my arm. She was sitting across the table, and she didn't say a word. She just
Mm,
looked me in the eye, touched my wrist,
mm,
and I knew in that moment that it was safe for me to feel whatever I was feeling. She wasn't asking more, she wasn't asking why, she wasn't trying to comfort me and telling me it was okay. She just
yeah.
was there present with me, and I can say it was really profound. It taught
Mm,
me, even in the times that I may be uncomfortable, asking someone to open up more, you know, deeply,
yeah.
or because I worry so much about other people, I wonder if I ask that, what, how will they react to it? If maybe they're not comfortable opening up further, maybe they don't know why the emotion is coming up. There's no cognitive explanation for it, right?
Right,
Um,
right,
and so it taught me I don't have to speak in order to let them feel seen and heard. I just have to
right.
be there.
Right, right. And really that idea of how do we how do we show people that we are there, right? Fully. And so one of the ways is just what you described, which is we're not used to this, but just not being in our heads thinking about other things while somebody else is talking, but
Absolutely.
really being present, right? And listening fully and acknowledging even in the subtle ways, that I see you, I hear you, right? By a nod of the
Yes.
head, maybe a little touch, maybe just a reassuring shrug, right? It's the idea of I'm here, I'm getting you, I'm receiving you. And
Yes.
and that is a gift. That's one of the
It,
biggest gifts that we can give in this world today.
it's so incredible. And, when I think about my work as a coach, your work as a coach, I tell people my work is about creating a safe space for
Mm,
people to really feel into their heart's desires, right? What is it they
right.
want? What is it they want to change? And, there's so many ways to create that safe space. And sometimes we don't think about the importance of doing that in our own life, right? How I'm going to bring it back to ourselves. As we do our inner work, as we do this beautiful work, how can we create a safe space for ourselves to do that work,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
then how can we begin to teach others to create a safe space for us?
Hmm. Yeah.
And how can we create a safe space for other people? With
Yes.
all from the heart, like you said, without the cognitive, without overthinking it, without
Yeah.
having to use too many words.
Mm.
to bring it to life.
Yes, yes. And it takes practice. So, one of the ways that we can begin practicing out there, everybody, is just to, uh, if you need to, put it in your calendar as a reminder. We've talked before about, having like a little stone that says listen, or, a little something in your pocket to remind you that that's what you're going to do today, that you're going to practice being present to other people, practice being a good listener. One of the things that's really hard for many people is just to be in the quiet together. And so even having a partner that you say, look, I just want to practice sitting in each other's company. Maybe we'll have tea or we'll have coffee and we'll just sit quietly together and we'll look around. Maybe we'll be outside. We'll just watch the birds or watch the trees or whatever and drink our coffee and not have to talk and just practice being quiet together and being okay with the quiet. Because sometimes in a culture where, everybody wants to get the last word in, we don't really know how to be quiet together and acknowledge that we're just here and it can be simple. We've made it so complicated.
Yeah. When you're talking about the stone in your pocket, the one that came to me, and I don't own this, but I think I'm going to go find one, is just be.
Yeah.
Like, how can we just be? And then you brought that right to, to being in the conversation about sitting quietly, sitting in silence.
Yeah.
How can we just be without having to do something to create that experience?
Yeah. I want to just before we wrap up, Laurel, talk a little bit about speaking into our own truth. And this one is really important, and I think it may be a little subtle, maybe a little more nuanced. But let's see what we can do with it, because I do think it's important that we talk a little bit into this, especially today, where we have a lot of people that are talking about what's the truth, what's the truth, what's the truth. And the truth, from a heartfelt place, is, I think, a little different than, let's say, the truth of the law. And I think that the truth of the law is kind of where we've gotten really caught up as the way that we define truth. And so the truth of the heart is really tuning inwardly to yourself and being able to, as best you can, share what your experience is in your heart and what you feel like you know and you understand from a very heart based place. And so it's more of a personal truth. Although, oftentimes, when we get really deep into our own truth and we live a very spiritual life, we encounter the bigger truths, right? The more lofty truths of being a human and living in the world today. So, the reason I really want to talk about that and have you speak into that a little bit too, Laurel, is because I think when we talk about this revolutionary aspect of living from the heart, this really isn't about, getting on social media and spouting off the truth of the law as you understand it or whatever. That's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking about how can you compassionately, gently, kindly focus into yourself and speak from the heart in something that you are experiencing personally within, right?
Yeah. And I really do love this topic. I describe it as internal versus external, right? So am I speaking about an external truth?
Right.
I mean, and let's face it, there's a connection between external and internal, but if I can really live from what I know to be true, and I do this practice, and this is a homework assignment with many of my clients. What do you know to be true about yourself? And when you begin to be able to live in that truth, you always, I'm going to say it strengthens your foundation, your self concept. You show up in integrity when you are living from what you know to be true about yourself.
Yeah.
And this list is regardless of external circumstances, right?
Right. Beautiful.
And so, and I often, what I think is so powerful about this journaling exercise, or a list. It could be as simple as a list of characteristics or attributes or, you know, um, yeah, descriptors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
what's so powerful about it is that you always have that with you, and
Yeah.
it becomes your filter for how you manage the external truths that are either um, consistent or in flow with your internal truth or in conflict, right?
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. It helps us. I love that in so many ways, it helps us get clearer about what we value and what's important to us. And then hopefully how identifying how we want to spend the precious time that we have, here on earth, right?
Yeah.
And if we're not happy in life, oftentimes going through that exercise and then looking at how you're spending your time and seeing if they're misaligned, sometimes that's the obvious aha moment of, wait a minute, I'm
Hmm.
not living day to day in alignment with who I really feel like I am inside. And how can I begin to, make movement to realign and create an alignment there that feels like it makes me feel more alive and awake, happy, excited to get up for my
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
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 Well,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Laurel.
I was
Let's,
just going to say, so many
yeah.
times we know something is off and we don't know what, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and so by going through this, what I know to be true about myself, and what when I do this exercise for myself, it really is, I feel into it. It's not the thoughts of, oh, I'm good at this. That's
Right.
it. Really is much deeper into um, the three brains, the intuition and the heart
Yeah.
and the head, trying
Yeah.
to not let this be just a list that you've created from your head.
Yeah, I love that you brought it back there to Laurel because I feel like, um, when you talk about, as we think about, what is the beautiful work, when we feel like something's off and we can't identify what it is, this is usually a great indicator that we are living more from the mind or from the shoulds or from like a culturally conditioned place. And when something feels off and we can't identify it, the solution is always to come back internally and really get into that heart space and start to acknowledge what's happening in there and follow the trail. It might take a while to get clear because oftentimes there's blocks there and conditioning that needs to get broken down to really get into the deeper truth of what's happening within us that maybe wants to emerge and come forth.
Yeah,
Yeah, but so worth the work, right?
it is.
Wow, Laurel, this was great. And it really teed us up for our next show, which I'm super excited about, which is going to be showing up fully. So let's come back real soon and dig into that topic. Okay.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Me too. Have a great week, everybody out there. We'll see you next week on Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life.
Thanks for joining us. Bye bye.
Bye for now.